this is step one to learning about financial aid, and it's really important to to know the process. And so this was useful for them. Hello, everybody. Again, welcome and welcome to our top sponsor content for this topic today is on deconstructing financial aid. My name is Jackie Nguyen. I am the assistant director for the undergrad admissions and the top advisor for UC Davis. I am so happy to have Melissa joining me today. She will be my other presenter on this content. She is a current student at UC Davis and was also a transfer student. So she can share a lot of her experience as a student. And then additional to that, we also have Melanie. Melanie is my co-worker at Davis. And I call her my other half because the territory and the area that we service overlap each other. So it's please help me welcome Mel and Melissa to join us today. And if you have any questions whatsoever, again, please use the Zoom function like the Q&A to ask any of your questions, and then use the chat when Melissa and I ask for engagement. So there will be questions within the slides that we will ask you. And if you don't mind, please use the chat when instructed to do so. This presentation will be also recorded, and you can access this on YouTube. And all you would need to look up, just type in the search bar, type in UC Davis Transfer Opportunity Program, and you should be able to see a bunch of content, not only content about admissions, but also content on financial aid and career navigating academia, for example. So again, today's topic is on reconstructing financial aid. Our goal is to break down that financial aid process and expose you to different type of financial aid that may be available to you. And then throughout the presentation, again, we're going to be asking for your understanding. So we're going to have some poll, we're going to have some engagement. So I would like to thank you in advance for your present and staying engaged with us. This is definitely not one of those lectures that we just lecture at you. It's more of an engagement. Before we go into the rest of our presentation, here are some housekeeping items. Please use Zoom function like the chat for engagement. Throughout the presentation, you will see a few questions of the day. We would love for you to engage by providing your answers in the chat. And then questions that you ask, please try to make sure that it is relevant to the session topic today. If you have questions, you can use your raise hand at the end, and then you can ask your question, or you can also use the Q&A to ask your question during the presentation. We will try our best to answer as many questions as possible, but in case we don't have enough time, please forgive us. We'll try our best to answer all the questions. But also we encourage that you reach out to our financial aid specialist if the questions that you have are very specific to financial aid eligibility, since we are on the other side of like admission, not so much of financial aid. And then lastly, would like to also disclose that TOP has no financial interest or relationship to disclose, as our program and staff are not financial aid specialists. And the information we curated for this presentation came from several sources, and we will provide that to you in a form of QR code or a slide with all of the source. Please consider using the information that you've learned today as a step one for your financial aid. And then step two should always be about following up with the university financial aid expert of your interest. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and go into deconstructing financial aid. All right, here's a quick agenda for our conversation today. First, we will explain financial aid process and the different types of financial aid available to you. We will also give you an example on how my award will look like if you were to apply to UC Davis, but other UCs and CSUs and private school also use very similar terminology, my award, as a way to show, your financial aid package, basically. So it's going to look very similar. And then we will end with some takeaways and some tips for you. Okay, so in order to deconstruct or break apart, right? Deconstruct means break apart. So in order to deconstruct financial aid, you may ask yourself, what is financial aid? And financial aid is an umbrella term. It consists of a wide range of resources available to help students and family meet the cost of education. And this is how you're going to pay for college, right? Colleges and university often use the term cost of attendance to sum up the total amount it will cost for a student to attend a school within that academic year. And this may include tuitions and fees, room and boarding, right? Housing, books and supplies, transportation, right? So if you're driving, if you're taking bus, if you pay for that, personal expenses and other expenses that are not noted. The QR code that you see on the right-hand side will take you to the federal aid, student aid glossary to understand terms and definition. They already kind of put everything together. So I find that useful for you to kind of be familiar with the term and definition when it's come to student aid. And then up next is our first question of the day. So please use the chat to share your answer with us. Okay, first question. Again, please use the chat. There are 4 types of financial aid. Do you know the answer? And you should be able to put that in the chat now. I did change the chat option to say everyone, so you should be able to answer that question. True. Thank you so much, V, Greg, Jackie, Raquel. Wow. Okay. I see you. All right. So all of you had said true. I don't see any false. So that's awesome. There are 4 financial aid types of financial aid. So the next question is, what are the types of financial aid? A, grants and scholarship. B, work study. C, loans. And D, all of the above. What's the answer? Belle, you're killing it. Okay, Mark, awesome. Greg, Ali, Megan, oh my goodness. Everybody say D. I don't see anything else. Anna, say A. Perfect. Yes, so these are all types of financial aid: grant, scholarship, work study, and loan. The answer to this question is D, all of the above. These are different types of financial aid, but grant and scholarship is free money. So Melissa is going to talk a little bit more about these terminology for you in the next couple of slides.
Thank you, Jackie. So yeah, let's talk about the different types of financial aid that you can obtain. Depending on your situation and identifiers, you might have access to some and not all of the different types of financial aid you see here on the screen. There are 4 types of financial aid. You have grants, scholarships, work study, and loans. Grants and scholarships are considered gift aid, which means that you do not have to repay them. And the QR code on the right will take you to the Federal Student Aid website, where they provide you with even more information about these types of aids. And then in the next slide, I'm going to be talking about grants. So grants are aid awarded based on financial need. They can come from the federal government, they can come from your state government, your college, or a private or nonprofit organization. You must do your research and apply for grants you might be eligible for, and be sure to meet the application deadlines. So you might have heard of the more popular grants like the Federal Pell Grant or the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, which is the FCO, and maybe the Teacher Education Assistance for college and higher education, which are the TEACH grants at the federal level. In the state level, here in California, we have Cal Grants A, B, and Z. And lastly, grants can also come from the institution that you're attending. So at the community college level, a common grant we've seen is the Promise Grant. And again, there are many different types of grants at different levels, and the ones that we highlighted on the screen are some of the most common ones that we often see. And up next, I'm going to talk about scholarships. So similar to grants, scholarships are free money, and they do not need to be repaid, but they are not always based on financial needs. So some scholarships are merit-based, meaning that they take into account your academic performance, talent, major or minor and or extracurricular activities. And scholarships can be offered by the schools, communities, individuals, employers, nonprofit, private companies, and professional and social organizations. So remember to be vigilant and to avoid scams. You do not have to pay anyone or any websites to find scholarships. And you can refer again to a resource document for tips on how to avoid scams and identity thefts. And we highly recommend that you start your search at your current institution. So in your community college page, you'll have a financial aid tab that will probably link you to the scholarships that are offered there. And we also have work study. Work study program is a great way to earn money and gain valuable work experience while pursuing a college degree. And you can graduate for your institution with some work experience in your resume, which is great. Federal Work Study provides part-time jobs for undergraduate and graduate students with financial need, allowing them to earn money to help pay for their educational expenses. And the program encourages community service work and work related to the student's course of study. Students are responsible for initiating the job search process. So at Davis, our students use Handshake, which is available on the UC Davis Internship and Career Center, which is how I got this job. And then students are paid in the form of a payroll check for the time put in that they've worked. And work study is awarded on a first come, first served basis with an estimated amount of up to $3,000 a year. Please keep in mind that your main objective as a student is to do well in school and to grow professionally and personally. And most importantly is to graduate. So once you graduate, you'll have the next like 20 to 30 years to work, so you don't have to rush this. But if you're on the FAFSA, there will be a question on whether you're interested in work study. And if you are, you need to click on it. And it's a spot that students often overlook. But when you're ready to apply for jobs on campus, most departments will usually prioritize work study students when they're looking to hire someone. And I'm going to pass the mic to Jackie so she can discuss loans.
I feel like I'm almost like the pro when it comes to loans. Loans is the type of financial aid that a lot of time people don't really like, because it's a type of financial aid that you need to pay back, right? So by definition, a loan is a sum of money that you can borrow, usually limited to a certain amount, depending on what loan you're checking out, and you have to pay that back with interest. So you definitely need to do your research a lot before you start taking out a loan, right? So my tip for you is, when it comes to borrowing a loan, is to only borrow what you actually need, right? So the way that I see federal loan is, and the way that I organize this slide is that I put a lot of, really big space on federal, and then I put a little bit on university, and then alternate, right? And I really, really want you to really consider, if you need to take out loans, to consider federal loan. And the reason is because federal loans have a lot of options, like, loan forgiveness, depending on where you work, right? You may qualify for loan forgiveness. They also have a direct consolidation loan process that is kind of nice to manage when you're borrowing multiple loans. And they do tie, because it is with federal loan. And I'll tell you a story about this later on, but basically my tip for you is to only borrow the amount that you actually need. Don't borrow more than you don't need, right? And use the loan and look at the loan as a way that you invest in your future. So think about it as like, okay, instead of working multiple jobs, barely have enough time to study and dedicate to your school, it's sometimes better to just take out a loan in a small amount so that you can devote the rest of that time on to your education, so that you can do really well. And then, once you graduate, you're going to work, and then you're going to pay it back. And that's a better investment, in my opinion. When it comes to federal loan, you do have, two options. You have a few options here, but the two options that I underlined here is the direct subsidized loan and the direct unsubsidized loan. Basically, one of them is you're basically the borrower, so you're going to be paying that interest, and the other loan is the Department of Education is the borrower. So they basically pay the interest while you're in school. And then when you're graduating, you will pay that back. And usually there's a grace period. So after 6 months, if you found a job, you do need to go back and pay for the loan. But if you continue with school, let's say after you graduated, 6 months comes and then you ended up going back to school for whatever, maybe graduate school or teaching credential, whatever, right? You can notify the lender and let them know, hey, I'm going back to school. And they basically pause that and they delay that loan payment for you. So the federal loan had a lot of benefits, if you do end up taking it. So do your research on this. The other options that you also have too is the parent loan. I personally, if I do need it, I will take it out. But personally, I don't really recommend that because the interest that I have seen in my research, it has always been a little bit higher compared to the student when they actually taking out a subsidized or unsubsidized loan. So again, make sure you do your research when it comes to this. And that's at the federal level. At the university level, most of the schools do have loans, and it's usually based on financial need, and it ranges from 5% to 9%. I haven't seen anything higher than that, but it does varies from school to school. And then the alternate options for you is to look at maybe private company, banks. So those are some places that also offer loans, but usually their loans are a little bit higher interest as well. So again, just do your research to make sure that you understand the terms and conditions of the loans, and especially what is that interest, right? What is that interest once you have to pay it back? So just make sure you do that. Later on today, I'm going to be going over to the Federal Student Aid website, and I'll show you how to look at, the loan options. They have really good resources there as well.
Right now we can do the third question. So please use the chat function to drop in your answer. And the question is, am I exempt from paying my loans if my lender fails to send me a bill? True or false? I'm seeing a lot of false, and that is correct. So again, remember that it's your responsibility as a borrower to keep track when your loan payment is due. So if you answer false, you're correct. And then you have to also keep in mind of how much you've borrowed and also the name of the loan service provider and their contact information. And we can move on to just other tips. If you are considering taking a loan, again, please be responsible. First, I urge you to do some research on starting salaries in your field. You can use the U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Outlook Handbook or a career search tool to search careers and salaries. And then secondly, keep track of how much you're borrowing. So think about the amount of loans that will affect your future finances and how much you can afford to repay. Your student loan payments should only be a small percentage of your salary after you graduate. So it's important to borrow no more than school-like related expenses. And third, make sure that you understand the terms of your loan and you keep copies of your loan documents. So when you sign a promissory note, you're agreeing to repay the loan according to the terms of the note, even if you don't complete your education, or if you can't get a job, or if you just don't like the education that you received. So you need to keep that in mind, and you need to make payments on time. So you're required to make payments on time, even if you don't receive a bill or a repayment notice or a reminder. And you must pay the full amount required by your repayment plan. And then last but not least, you need to keep in touch with your loan servicer. So you need to notify them of when you graduate or when you withdraw or drop below a half-time status. And when you transfer, if you transfer to like another institution, or if you change your name or address or social security number. So you also should contact your servicer if you're having trouble making your scheduled loan payments. And then your servicer will provide you with several options to help you keep your loan in good standing if that is the case. But we can move on To the next slide. So this is how to apply for FAFSA. So to apply for different type of financial aid, you must start with FAFSA, or the California DREAM Act application. It must be filed every year between October 1st and March 2nd, but that has changed. So with the changes in FAFSA and CADA, the filing window will start in December this year. And both FAFSA and the California DREAM Act application have their own eligibility criteria that you want to pay attention to. So FAFSA is available for US citizen, permanent residents, and if you have an arrival departure record, such as an I-94, or if you're a US citizen and immigration services, or if you hold a T non-immigrant status, don't assume that you can't get aid just because you're not a citizen. There's a list available on the Federal Student Aid website by visiting studentaid.gov. And also the DREAM Act application allows undocumented and non-resident students who qualify for a non-resident exemption under AB 540 to receive certain types of financial aid. So you can visit the DREAM website for the California DREAM Act application, and then students must submit a certified grade point average to the California Student Aid Commission. So be sure to follow up and submit your paperwork. And again, with the new changes to the FAFSA, they have created what is called now the FAFSA Simplification Act. And the FAFSA Simplification Act a streamlined application process for applying for federal financial aid. And it has expanded eligibility for federal financial aid for more students and has reduced barriers for certain student populations. So in the past, the federal student aid used the EFC, which I think stands for the estimated financial contribution, as part of their formula to determine how much aid a student is qualified for. And starting in 2024, they will replace it with the Student Aid Index, or the SAI, to determine the financial need. So with this new change, there are two new terms that they've added. So you have contributor, which is anyone who is asked to provide information on the FAFSA, like a parent, guardian, student, spouse. And consent, which is each contributor will need to consent to their information being included on the FAFSA. And this formula change will mean more Pell Grants are awarded to students, and it links eligibility to family size and the federal poverty line. And then lastly, the federal student aid will use data received from the IRS to calculate the federal Pell Grant eligibility and also the SAI. So this will make it much easier to transfer your tax information when you're filing the FAFSA. And when you visit the Federal Student Aid website, if you scroll to the bottom, you'll find something that looks like the screenshot here. So here's kind of how financial aid works. You first start planning early, and then you fill out the FAFSA form, and please submit it no later than March 2nd. And then once you get accepted, you can review your aid offer, and you should ask financial aid specialists questions if you didn't understand something. And then after you get your aid, if you did take out loans, you need to please have a plan to repay your loans. And also, I want to point out the announcement section on the website. So since there's like a lot of changes to the FAFSA, this is a good location to check announcements, recordings, and events that you need to learn more about. And also don't forget to check out the FAFSA form as soon as it's available. So with that, I'm gonna pass the mic to Jackie so she can do the federal student navigation.
Thank you so much. So when you go to this website, I'm going to also put that in the chat for y'all, but you can also look at what I'm doing, okay? The Federal Student Aid, they did some changes to it, but I really like the way that they formulate the website. First thing first, you want to look at the top, right? These are kind of cookie crumbs, depending on what it is that you're looking for, right? So you would basically go in here. Again, we mentioned earlier the 24, 25, FAFSA form, will be launched later on in December. So that's what they say right here. So just note that down. And I would recommend to, as soon as they launch it, to go on there and kind of look around to kind of just familiarize yourself with the landscape, right? Because you don't know what are the changes, even for us, we don't even know what the changes actually look like. So as soon as it opens, as soon as it's available and you qualify for FAFSA, please go on there and take a look at it. You can also look at how to prepare. Again, there's a lot of recording and sessions that they included in this website that you can be a little bit more familiar with the FAFSA process. So these are some stuff to look at. Loans and grant. I think this part is very educational. I used to get so scared when looking at loan. I didn't even consider that when I was doing my undergrad. But on the flip side of that, my husband took out loans because his family are a little bit, on the middle class range. And so when he started college, all he had available to him was loans. And so that's what he was taking out. What he did was a combination. He did federal loan. He also did some private loan, which made it very difficult to do the consolidation. So that's why I recommend from personal experience that if you're thinking about consolidating, like managing it, like if you don't take out a bunch of loans, then you can manage it really well. It's kind of like paying your credit card. But if you do happen to take out multiple loans like he did, because he went to law school, he did ended up taking out a lot of loans, and they're all kind of all over the place. And thankfully, he's very organized. But for someone who, if they weren't organized, having that consolidation loan process would have been helpful, right? So federal will allow you to do that. Sometime, depending on the loans and the private loans, they may not have that process for you. So just make sure you do your research when it comes to that. But here's a lot of information and resources that you can read, to learn a little bit more about grants and about loans. There's also a calculator that you can use to estimate. So that's kind of cool. Also loan payment here. Once you actually taking out a loan, you might want to read these. I find these very useful. Okay, and then I did talk a little bit about loan forgiveness. So I'll tell you a little story about loan forgiveness. I mentioned earlier my husband took out a lot of loans, right? So what happened is that he started working for the state, and because the state is part of the provider for they participate in the loan forgiveness. Any public agencies, they participate in the loan forgiveness. So with him, what he did was he started working for the state, and as soon as he finishes 10 years working for the state, his loan will be forgiven. So even if the amount is $300,000. Okay, so that is a cool thing. And so I want you to kind of have a plan, think about the plan. Don't be afraid when it comes to loan, but I do want you to be prepared if you do seek for loan, right? If you are planning to take out a loan, have a plan with that. So let's go down here a little bit more. And you can put on here to kind of know the deadline. So for example, if I put in California and I put in 2023, 2024, and I look that up, you will see when the priority deadline will be. The federal deadline will be the 30th, right, at the end of the year. But in order to be considered priority, and oftentimes to give enough time for the college, for the universities to have enough time to create your financial aid package, you do want to make sure that you submit it no later than March 2nd if you are eligible. Okay, so just note that down. But the actual application is not due until June 30th. Okay, let's go down to here a little bit more, and you're gonna see, let me go back to how financial aid work. Right, this looks exactly like the slide that Melissa showed us earlier, right? So, but then they're gonna go into more details, right? So this is kind of nice as it give you kind of like a roadmap, as you kind of navigate through the process of when you're applying to financial aid. So this is a good one for you to look into. But the website and the way that they design it is, I find it very self-explanatory. It's pretty user-friendly, right? The one thing that we didn't really go into was the California Dream Act. And I do want to say this. Federal student aid is an agency at the federal level. They oversee FAFSA, right? But in California, California Student Aid Commission is an actual agency in the state of California. It's actually not too far away from my house. I live in Sacramento. It's not too far from my house. But this is an actual state agency in California. And with California Dream Act is an act, right, from California. So it is being housed and processed within this, what we call CSAC for short, but California Student Aid Commission. So on that Dream Act application, just in case we have any AB 540 students in this room, I want to kind of quickly go over this really quick for you. Again, there's the information and resources are up here. You know, if you're a first-time user, start there, returning user, start there, and then parent signatures there to submit, right? Really straightforward. So I love that. Let me see if I can go back to the federal. And then of course, when in doubt, you can also check with our financial aid, specialist, any of the schools that you're interested in, whether that is CSU, UC's private school, right? All of them, all of those campuses do have financial aid officers. And it's always recommended, as much as you plan for your admission, you should do the same thing and allocate some time with when it comes to financial aid as well. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the presentation, and then Melissa, I'm going to also go over the My Award section, just in case you are thinking about applying to Davis, or if you are applying to Davis already. I want to make sure that when you actually see something like this, you're already aware, you're already familiar with it. But I do want to give you a quick disclaimer too. The screenshot that you see on here was from last year, and that was when the EFC was still a part of the formula, right? The calculation. But as we're moving into the direction of the index, right, it's going to look a little bit different, but it's not too much of a different. It's just probably this section is going to look different, right? But so how do you read this? So if you're a student, once you get admitted to Davis or any school, you're going to see similar things. You're going to see the estimate cost of attendance. This is how much it would cost, right? The total of contribution from the federal grants, right? From the federal grants. So this is the amount that most likely the student on this profile got Pell Grant. And this is the number because I can see the EFC there. Oh,
Jackie, I
you
can't
don't
see the
see
screen. Yeah.
really? Oh my goodness. Hold on. What about now?
Yes.
Okay. You guys are so nice. Nobody say anything to me. All right, guys. Let's go back to this. So like I mentioned earlier, the EFC, right? With the change, this is going to look different, right? But this is a kind of like a quick snapshot of how it's going to look like if you were to go to Davis. There's usually always going to have like a estimate cost of attendance. This is how much is going to cost. This is the price, the sticker price, right? How much it's going to cost to go to school, right? During that whole academic year, the whole entire year, not just a semester or a quarter, it's a whole entire year. And that includes these items right here, right? You can see, I mentioned it earlier, right? Tuition and fees, those are fixed one. If you go to Davis or Berkeley or LA, they're all kind of going to be the same sticker price when it comes to tuition. Fees change from campus to campus depending on what they're for, the campus for. The books and supplies also going to be varies from campus to campus. Room and board will also be varies from campus to campus, right? And personal expenses, if you know how to budget and how to save, then this amount is going to also look different for everyone, for every student. But this is the calculation, kind of like a rubric that they have, right? When you look down to here, oops, went too far. When you look down to here, you're going to see this total estimate contribution. And this is basically, I think this is coming from Pell Grant because I see the EFC, and that's usually for FAFSA, right? The Pell Grant. So starting next year, if we have any students that are applying for fall 2024, it might look a little bit different for you, just spoiler alert. And then if you take this number and subtract this number, you're going to get the estimate financial need, right? And then when you go into the next slide, you're going to see, okay, well, what type of financial aid am I eligible for, right? So you meant to remember earlier on the other slide, you saw that you have Pell Grant, right? So it looks like the student also got Cal Grant A, right? So that's money that you don't have to pay back, right? Grants are money you don't have to pay back. Scholarships are money you don't have to pay back. You can also see here, there's a university grant, right? So that's amount. And then you also see a bunch of loans, right? So even though I look at this, oftentimes students look at like the summary, they will look at the bottom and they're like, oh, it's 0. That means there's nothing that's coming out of my pocket. That's not always true, right? So when you're looking and assessing the award, right, the financial aid package, you're going to see, okay, this is how much is going to cost for me to go to school, and this is how much it's going, these are the types of financial aid that are available to me. Let's say I recently got a scholarship. I applied to the Regent Scholarship in February, and I got a scholarship of $7,000, but I don't see that on my award. What do? You would want to reach out to your financial aid specialist at that school and let them know, hey, I was awarded that amount of money for the Regent Scholarship, but then I don't see that on my award page. Can you take a look into that, right? Let's say when you did your FAFSA and you didn't click on that little box that Melissa told you earlier when you were filling out your FAFSA, and you missed out on work study, but then you're coming back to the school and you said, hey, but I want to work as well. Can I, apply for work study? And let's say you get work study, then that would also be incorporated in here. But on this example, there was no work study, there was no scholarship, right? So it's really important that when you're looking at this, treat it as like how you would look at a bill, right? They're charging me for A, B, C, and D. Okay. And I got money from A, B, C, and D. This is missing, so you go to the financial aid office and you talk to them about that. Okay. So, okay. So I promise this is the last question for the day. And I know I asked you, for some of you, I asked you earlier in the poll, but let's take a minute and ask yourself this question. How am I going to how am I going to finance my education? How am I going to pay for school? So are you going to work and save money? Is your parent making a lot of money and save money for you in a policy like a 529 plan? And regardless of how you're going to answer the questions, I recommend that you should apply for financial aid. And I know that a lot of you did click on apply for financial aid by March 2nd earlier when we started the presentation. So, I hope that the one takeaway that you have today is that you should always apply for financial aid, regardless of, how much money your parents make. Okay. And don't forget, don't let anything be a barrier to your success. And if you don't know something, just ask. And if you don't try, you will never know. So if you never turn in your application for financial aid, you will never know, right? All right. So Melissa, I don't know if students will have enough time to watch the Princeton review video, but is it possible for you to kind of summarize it really quick for them?
Yes, absolutely. So again, there will be a QR code that you can scan so you can watch. It's a really short video, but it goes a lot into detail about what we've talked about. So they cover some tips. And one of them is, again, to apply for financial aid, even if you don't think that you qualify, because oftentimes you do. I think in the video, they say that oftentimes about $1 billion go unclaimed in financial aid because students just don't apply.
Mhm.
Number 2 is to look beyond the sticker price, meaning that if you are interested in going to a school that has a really high tuition, oftentimes those really expensive schools will cover everything on a need-based system. So it's often cheaper to go to these really costly Ivy League schools as opposed to what you would think would be like a more affordable school. And number 3 is to consider your starting salary and earning potential, which again comes really handy when you are about to pay your loans back. And if you take loans, and number 4 is to like remember that you can appeal your financial aid package, and you should, between the time that you file for your FAFSA and then you receive your award package, and also the time that you are in the institution that you apply to. Some things can change, like maybe your family had some complications, and then your expected contribution changes, so you can always like negotiate that, and you should go to your financial aid advisor to like refinance your like financial aid package. And then number 5 is to familiarize yourself with the terms of your scholarship awards. Some of them may have like a specific stipulations that can hurt you if you don't complete them. So for example, it can be, you can get a scholarship for like your like a specific major, but then what if you want to change your major along the way? So you would want to be careful about the terms and conditions that come with any as like scholarships that you obtain. And last but not least, again, this is not from the video, but please communicate with your school financial aid specialist. Financial aid is a very personal and unique. And again, we're not experts, but we know a thing or two from just also being students and having gone through this process. But if you have any like super specific questions, you should contact your like financial aid specialist. And aside from the types of financial aid that we've discussed about, the UC system has many financial aid programs. So the UC provides several financial aid programs like the Blue and Gold Opportunity Plan, which is available for families that make less than $80,000 a year. And then the Middle Class Scholarship Program is also available both in the UC and the CSUs. And then you have many different programs such as the Native American Opportunity Plan, which is UC system-wide, and the Allen Pate Scholarship. And then within UC Davis, there's the Aggie Grant Plan, and then there's special programs, and also a specific assistance that falls under EOP or for the Children of Fallen Heroes Scholarship. And these are just some examples. So again, I'm gonna put a link down so that you can make your own research after this presentation, if you're interested about those specific aids. And these are just some really helpful links and videos. And again, this presentation is going to be recorded and uploaded to the YouTube top page, so you can review. And yeah, this is the end of the presentation. So again, some key takeaways that you should keep in mind is to apply for financial aid by the March 2nd priority deadline. And then the hard deadline is on June 30th. For prospective students who will apply in fall 2024. And on your UC application is your scholarship application. So please make sure that you start early and then you allocate the appropriate time to work in your application and to not skip the scholarship section on the UC application. And probably the most important takeaway is to connect with your financial aid office at your school and to check out their websites and to make an appointment with them and talk about like your financial questions and needs, and also to up your like financial literacy game. So you can follow us on our social media pages to learn more money management tips and to find out what's coming up. And then you can also watch our previously recorded videos by searching the UC Davis Transfer Opportunity Program. And you can also click on the Financial Literacy Week playlist. And again, talk to your financial aid specialist at the school of like your choosing. So your homework is just to visit your school's financial aid website and to look around and to be familiar with the types of aid that your community college is offering. So to do the same, to check out the schools you're planning to apply to. Don't work harder than you have to. So there are financial aid experts that are hired to work for you. And I'm gonna let Jackie complete the presentation and open the floor for questions.
Thank you so much. Again, we are not financial aid specialists. Like we mentioned, we're not the expert, but we had gone through this process time and time again. Melissa had gone through this as a student. I had gone through this when I was doing my undergrad and graduate. Melanie, same thing, right? So we're kind of like, see us as your big sisters that already went through this process and curating the information in one place to provide that to you. But again, one main takeaway is if you have specific questions about financial aid eligibility, how is that going to look like, things like that, please consider talking to the university of your interest. Check out their financial aid, and then you can also contact the expert at the financial aid office at those schools. Okay, so this is ours at Davis. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so that I can see the screens for the chat and the Q&A. So give me 1 second. Am I still sharing screen? Yeah, I am. That was a lot on my screen. Sorry, y'all. Mel, you had a question live? Oh, yeah. Okay. I did tell Mel earlier that when I was putting this presentation together, I felt like we were leaving out my international students. A lot of the students that I work with, and I know that in California in general, are identified as AP 540 or international students. And so Davis has a international resource for you when it comes to financial aid. I'm going to put that in the chat in case somebody else want that information. So let me see if I could put everyone. There we go. But yeah, there are a lot of UCs, CSUs that have resources. And I want you to think about it like this. Don't feel afraid if like you're not even thinking about going to the school, but let's say you're just shopping around. Who said you need to buy anything, right? You're just shopping around. It's okay to window shop sometimes. So go to the financial aid website, go to the career center website at some of the universities and see what are some of the resources on those websites. I find it extremely helpful, I always recommend Davis website because the way that the financial aid website is set up, I really like it. I'm kind of OCD, so I really like the way that it's set up. Am I still sharing my screen by chance? Yes, I think I am. Okay, cool. So on Davis website, even if you're kind of like thinking like you're at the community college right now, you're like, okay, I really want to apply to a lot of scholarships, right? I'm an international student. I'm not going to qualify for FAFSA. I'm not going to qualify for California Dream Act. Maybe not. You don't know. You got to check the eligibility list. Okay. But let's say you're an international student and you already checked and you're like, I'm not qualified for any of that. And you're like, okay, but I like free money. I don't want to have to pay. I don't want to have to take out loans. You might want to take a look at, school website, especially the ones that say outside scholarships. These are terminology that all the schools use. I've seen that when I visit at all of the schools' website. Outside scholarship is nice because it basically the financial aid specialists already vetted these companies or these organizations, CBOs, right? And they curated it for you already, and they already vetted, right? Making sure that it's not a scam, it's not like weird stuff going on over there. And then they curated for you here. And why I like Davis website is that they have these filter, right? So let's say I'm an international student. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to say, sorry. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to have some time in December and I'm going to have some time in January, right? That's like usually you guys' break. And I want to see all of them and I'm going to filter it out. Now it's already filtered out a good amount, but it's still your job to make sure that you read this, right? To make sure that it match, right? For what you're actually doing. And then from there, I would highly recommend that you create an Excel sheet and then just kind of plug everything in. And I really like the way that Sac City, I'm just going to also show you really quick. And again, you guys can also watch our financial aid. Part of our financial aid series, we recently covered Apply for Scholarship Like a Pro, where we went really deep into financial aid and particularly the scholarship component. And this is one of the campuses at the community college level that I really like because the way that it's set up. So like for people who don't know how to set up their tracking sheet, you can follow this format. So I'm going to go ahead and click on scholarships here. And I'm going to click on, where is it? Time sensitive. And you can see the way it lay out, right? It's really simple. You have the deadline here, you have the link, hyperlink, the scholarship name, the hyperlink to that website, the amount, because we got to know how much. And then the one thing that I usually add on here is when did I submit that and when are they going to release decisions for those scholarship applications. That's what I usually have in my template. Right. And so I highly recommend, especially for the international students, and it's not just international students, all students should be taking advantage of anything that is free. Like free is good. Free has your name on it. Please make sure you go and pick it up. Okay. So just make sure you take advantage of that. So the grants comes from you filling out your FAFSA, right? So there's only a certain amount of students qualify for FAFSA or California Dream Act. But again, if you're an international student, another free one is the internship, right? Before you have to pay for loans. Let me go ahead and stop sharing. I'm going to also put that link in the chat for you in case you want to follow that format. It's under apply for outside scholarship and time sensitive scholarship section. Okay. But Ryan, I cannot answer that particular question that you asked. The reason is because I can't recommend any particular loan company, because again, we're not legally, we're not allowed to advertise or recommend a certain loan company because of the work that we do here in this space. Okay, there's no other questions. Are we done? Oh my God, we finished. It's 5:58 and there's no questions in the Q&A.
There's a question in the chat.
Oh, some questions.
One question.
Okay, the one that just came in. I have a question. When I fill out the UC application, it asked me if I was out of the country for more than 6 weeks. I checked yes because I went to Japan for 8 weeks. Then it said I have to go to the California Dream Act application. I'm confused about the home. No, ooh. Yeah, that's pertaining to the UC application. That has nothing to do with the FAFSA. So let me see. What school, what community college are you from? BCC. I would highly recommend for you to reach out to your UC Davis advisor, because that is relating to the UC application particularly. And then what you can also do is, do you have any tip for this one, Mel? I would actually put no, and then I'll put under the additional comment section, I would disclose that. But more than 6 weeks. And then you were out in Japan for 8 weeks. That's a good question.
Yeah, was it consecutively 8 weeks? That's what I could think of too. It was consecutive.
Yeah, we will need to do some research on that one. That's why I'm recommending to talk to BCC. I don't know who that is. I think that's Kim. But I would recommend, if you guys have questions about on the UC application, and also to disclosure, even though we work in admissions, we don't own UC application. So we also kind of like you, trying to help you navigate that whole thing. But it is owned by our, the Office of the President. So it, once you submit your application, it goes to this entity, this group. And then at a certain time, once everything closed and they clean up and they they do all the auditing, it gets sent and it get distributed to all of the UC campuses that you say that you're interested in. And then from there, they, the university will have that application and they will review your application after, if you're a transfer student, after a certain time, after you get your TAU submitted. So that's, when it comes to the UC application, sometimes we're also trying to troubleshoot to help you, because we don't want to, I try not to send my students to the hotline, because that hotline is going to be long waiting. So oftentimes surface level, troubleshoot, we can help you with that. But again, I highly recommend that for that particular question, I really don't know the answer and I don't want to give you the wrong answer. I would highly recommend to reach out to your top rep, so that she can, do some digging and research for you. Okay. Vincent, I'm gonna stop recording so that you guys can ask the questions a little bit better, but it's also 6 o'clock, so I would like to also, let me see if I can stop the recording so that you can feel a little bit like your information is not disclosed to the internet. Hold on one second. Okay.